The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar hosted by the Archdiocese of Washington, Department of Special Needs Ministries. My name is Rachel Chung, Disabilities Coordinator. In this webinar, we will explore tips and strategies for celebrating the Advent and Christmas season. We will also explore today resources available to parish staff and ministry volunteers to ensure all are truly welcomed into this joyous time for our Catholic community. The Advent and Christmas season is also a time to re-evangelize people and families who attended church sporadically or have completely left. Families supporting a loved one with disabilities may have been hurt by rejection from their own parish, but still are seeking a place in the Catholic Church. It is vital for us to be ready to receive any and all who come to our church family during the holiday season. Later in our webinar, we will welcome Anthony Esser from the Archdiocese of Washington Office of Evangelization. We will discuss with Anthony additional resources available to our parishes to spread the word that Jesus is born to all those who are returning to the church or new to our Catholic faith. There are many radio stations in our area which play holiday music all day and all night. How do you feel sometimes when you hear the well-known and well-heard song sung by Andy Williams? It's the most wonderful time of the year. Depending on the day, I know there are moments when I'm ready to scream at the radio and say, "Really?" What does this time of year, though, mean to families supporting children and or adults living with disabilities? First of all, there are many changes in the typical routine, and it's completely turned on its head. For example, schools are closed, sometimes for a week or more. Parents can be off from work and at home. Additional activities can be scheduled or programs closed for the holidays. For adults who are working, employers can increase hours needed or decrease hours. We can all agree there are many different sights, sounds, and tastes during the holidays. Decorations, holiday music, foods are served which are not normally a part of everyday meals. And of course, there are plenty of sugar-filled items everywhere. A part of the holiday season is seeing relatives from out of town or simply just seeing relatives we typically see only a few times in the year. Comments are made which may seem polite enough to the asker, but definitely not to you. Your loved one could be surrounded by many people who are not familiar with them but want to engage. This can be very overwhelming for the person. For some people living with disabilities in a group home or other type of setting, this time of year can be very lonely. Parents who normally picked up the person for the holidays may be elderly themselves, unable to do so, or passed away. There could be broken relationships and relatives who are not willing to host the person. Many group homes are filled with caring and loving staff who try to make the holidays special, but in others, it's just simply another day with nothing special being done. And we all feel this pressure to do it all: buy and wrap presents, make cookies, decorate the house, host relatives, and more. We ourselves are really not feeling up to our normal selves. So what are the experiences of the deaf community? Because they also experience some challenges during the holiday season as well. During holiday gatherings, many conversations are going on. However, the deaf person is not included. Often, there are times when American Sign Language, or ASL, is not available during Advent prayer services, reconciliation services, or Christmas Mass, especially if the deaf person is visiting relatives out of town. There are parts of the Christmas season which do not appeal to all deaf persons, such as holiday music. For some elderly deaf persons who live in nursing homes or other types of settings, there could be no one there who uses American Sign Language. That person can no longer drive to visit friends, and there's no one nearby to communicate with them. I pictured here are some parishioners from our St. Francis Deaf Catholic Church enjoying fellowship with one another and celebrating the holidays. We know in our hearts Advent is a time of waiting and preparing for our Lord's arrival, but all of us get caught up in the busyness of the Christmas season. In this reading of Isaiah, often read during the Advent season, the prophet reminds us how the world changed at the coming of the Savior. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be the girdle of his waist, and faithfulness the girdle of his loins. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow and the bear shall feed, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The suckling child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. In that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a sign to the peoples. Him shall the nations seek, and his dwelling shall be glorious. Children, too, often remind us of the true meaning of the season. Look at the joy in these two children's faces. The children are participating in the Las Posadas celebration as Mary and Joseph. Las Posadas, originating in Mexico, recalls how Joseph and Mary could not find a place to stay before the birth of Jesus. Have we welcomed Jesus in our hearts this season, just as these children have? What are some simple tips for celebrating this Christmas season? Try not to overschedule. You can say no to invitations, and I've heard this from many family members that it's okay to say no. If possible, maintain as much as you can the routine, such as meal times and sleep patterns. Your loved one does have a role for the holidays. They can take coats, they can hand out drinks, and they can give out cards. Everyone can play a part in the holiday celebrations. Plan for your loved one also to give gifts, singing a song, making a card. These are simple ways that a person living with disabilities can also give to others. Attend events which fit your loved one's needs, such as singing carols, or maybe perhaps it'll be better for your loved one to have a quiet Advent prayer service. So think about your loved one and what's going to work best for how they are as a person and what fits their needs. All of us should be visible signs of welcome in our parish, but especially when persons with disabilities are there lighting the Advent wreath or participating in the nativity play. It shows the entire church community that all are welcome because they're fully included in those celebrations. Everyone loves a birthday party, including those living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So why not celebrate Jesus' birth as a birthday party? And coming soon, we will also have available on our Archdiocese of Washington website the parishes that will be having Advent and Christmas services in American Sign Language. So please stay tuned for that upcoming resource. One mother shared with me how in her child's early years, they spent the holidays how everyone does typically. They were visiting families, going overboard with decorations, and accepting every invitation. And their son lived with pretty significant needs and also lives with autism. Because of that, their child's autism, those things were very overwhelming. And this led to her son having very extreme temper tantrums, and she felt embarrassed. But later on, she reflected how she had to find and forge a new way to celebrate the holidays, and that changed for their family. So they switched to quiet time at home. They only put a very few decorations on a tree, and they politely turned down invitations to holiday dinners. This was not easy for her, but she saw that as a new and different way for her family and also a more peaceful way to celebrate the coming of Jesus. I think we can all learn a lesson from that on how we can all slow down and make sure we're reflecting on the reasons for the season. Ushers and greeters are often the first persons to welcome the stranger into our midst during the Advent and Christmas season. What are some ways our ushers, greeters, and indeed the entire parish can ensure all are welcome? Let's review a few specific ways to greet people and their families with very specific needs. And please, we encourage anyone out there in our parishes and ministry volunteers and parish staff to send us their suggestions as well on what they found helpful. So for persons who are blind or have low vision, perhaps you want to arrange a tour of the church, and that way the person can kind of feel and look around using their hands to understand the layout of the church. As you greet someone who is blind or has low vision, please identify yourself and your role during the liturgy. So you can introduce yourself and say, I'm an usher here who can help you to your seat. Very important for persons who are blind or low vision is to ask first how they prefer to be assisted, and they will let you know what works best for them. The worst thing that can happen for a person who is blind is if you just simply grab them and lead them without telling them what's going on. For service animals, we do welcome service animals to our liturgies and parishes. Just a reminder to please walk on the opposite side of the service animal and do not touch the service animal. And the person who's blind who has a service animal will definitely remind you of that. And look to where you're leading the person as they want to be led. And you can give them small cues, like there's a small step coming up in about 3 feet. It's very helpful for them so they can feel like someone is really guiding them to where they need to be. And with permission, guide the person's hand to the back of the chair or pew when getting ready to be seated. That way they can have more of a feel of where the seat is and how they will be able to sit down. If you have a person who is blind or low vision who usually attends your church, please be aware that they're not going to be familiar with the extra plants and the extra decorations that are around the church. So please let them know so that way they can refamiliarize themselves with the church space. And this is something that's available through the Xavier Society for the Blind. Is readings in Braille for those that use that, and that's a free resource. We can also make sure we have large print hymnals or songbooks available. And that's very easy to do, and it really helps persons feel welcome to the parish. And also for those persons in our parish who are elderly, sometimes they really appreciate the large print materials. And please ask a person if they would prefer a Eucharistic minister to come to them. Perhaps they would prefer to walk themselves to receive the Holy Communion. How about persons who are deaf or hard of hearing? Very important is to establish with the person if they prefer to use sign language, speaking, writing, or a combination of methods to communicate. Not all persons who are deaf necessarily use sign language, especially persons who became deaf later in life. You can wave your hand in front of the person to get their attention or gently tap their shoulder lightly. This is an accepted form of getting someone's attention who's a person who is deaf, and they will be used to that. If a person uses a hearing aid, speak in clear sentences, move closer to the person to be understood, and look directly at them. That really helps someone who uses a hearing aid to understand you better. If you are speaking to someone through a sign language interpreter, look and speak directly to the person who is deaf. Do not speak to the interpreter. And the interpreter is there to just be a bridge of communication. So please feel free to continue to speak to the deaf person because that's the person you want to communicate with. And again, speak in a conversational tone of voice. This often happens to the deaf community. Speaking louder will not help. Just again, conversational tone will work well. If your parish has hearing loops, please remind and give those to perhaps our elderly parishioners or other parishioners who might need that. And if you are a parish that's going to have a sign language interpreter, please reserve that seating in front of the interpreter. That way, of course, it will be accessible for those persons. How about welcoming persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities? First of all, greet the person in an age-appropriate way. If you're meeting an adult, you should greet them in an adult way. If they did not understand what you told them, just try to rephrase it in a different way, and perhaps that will help the person to understand better. Please offer the person any program books or hymnals. That, again, is just a sign of welcome, that they're not different or exclusive to the church life, that they are fully included. If you did not understand the person, simply ask them to repeat it. And I always suggest to people, especially our ushers and greeters, if you didn't understand, that's fine. Just try to ask the person to repeat, and then perhaps you can gain a better understanding. Wait for the person to finish speaking, and then you can restate what you heard just to make sure you understood. Let the person finish what they are trying to say, and that's just a matter of letting them to communicate in the way that they need to communicate with you. Sometimes you can ask persons to show you or write it down for you if you're not able to understand them. And again, that just shows the person in the family that you're willing to take the time to understand them fully and include them into the life of the church. People who might have mobility challenges, and that can include walkers, canes, and not just wheelchairs. Ask them first where they prefer to seat. If a person is using a wheelchair, speak directly to them, not the person accompanying them. That so often happens to people using wheelchairs. For some reason, people want to speak to the person that might be pushing the wheelchair. Please speak directly to that person. And again, similar to people we support who are blind or low vision, only touch their wheelchair or move them with their permission. And if at all possible, try to be eye level with them so that they can feel like you're communicating directly with them. And again, I'll share an experience that I have asked people for if they needed my help in the past, and they have said no. And that's a part of how they want to be independent, and they want to make sure that they are able to access the church. So don't be offended by that. And never pat a person's head or the back of the wheelchair. If a person has difficulty walking long distance, like someone using a cane or a walker, offer them a place to rest before ushering them to a seat. So sometimes our distances might not seem long to us, but to someone using a cane, crutches, or walker, it can be a very long distance. Here are just a few other tips that can help to ensure all are welcome during our Advent and Christmas season. If a person is experiencing a challenging behavior during Mass, ask how you can help the caregiver. Because again, as we mentioned, during the holidays, there's much more in our parishes, there's more decorations, there's more music, there's more people, and that can just be very overwhelming for the person. So the worst thing we can do in welcoming families is to say, please, you need to leave. It's better for us to ask how we can help. What may be helpful for some parishes that can do this is to have a designated quiet area, and that can really help a person, especially with autism, to just calm down and feel like they're quiet, and then they'll be able to return to Mass. And children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities may express joy in different ways, such as hand flapping, jumping up and down. Let's welcome that diversity and that other ways to express the joy of the season. If you are the symbol of welcome, especially our ushers, greeters, and pastors, when you greet the family with a loved one with special needs in a joyful and sincere way, others will follow your example and they'll feel comfortable and being able to engage with that person. And again, as we mentioned earlier, please include people with disabilities in a meaningful way at our liturgies and Advent services. It's a sign of a culture of life in our parishes, a sign that we truly welcome all diversity and inclusiveness in our parishes. This picture here is from a Mass called Celebrating All God's Children, held at St. Francis Catholic Church in Durwood. This Mass celebrates the gifts of people with disabilities that they bring to our church community, very appropriately on the feast day of the Epiphany. All are welcome to this annual tradition at St. Francis, and it's typically celebrated at the 5 p.m. Mass on the Sunday of the Feast of the Epiphany. What a great way to celebrate the gifts we all bring to the Christ child. So now we will welcome Anthony, who is again from our Office of Evangelization. So we welcomed Anthony today to also share different ways that our parishes can be agents of evangelization. So Anthony, please introduce yourself to our webinar participants.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks so much for having me. As Rachel said, my name's Anthony Esser. I'm the coordinator of parish evangelization here at the Archdiocese of Washington. Among many other things, I coordinate the Find the Perfect Gift Advent evangelization campaign here in the Archdiocese.
So, Anthony, can you describe those resources that are available? And are these available in different languages? Because we know our Archdiocese is very diverse.
Yeah, so I'll start with saying some of the other things that our office does to support parishes in general is to develop and facilitate planning and training workshops on a number of different evangelization topics. We provide evangelization grant funds and other kinds of resources that we create in-house and also that we connect people with. And we consult with parishes on evangelization planning. Relative to Find the Perfect Gift, it's an initiative that aims to invite people back to the church during Advent and Christmas when so many people are already looking for a spiritual home. As part of the campaign, we provide resources for parishes, including catechetical resources, so different lessons and suggestions for engaging students in your parish school of religion or catechetical program, Advent-themed prayers of the faithful, bulletin announcements. A lot of these are geared towards parishioners, encouraging them and empowering them to reflect on their role as evangelizers during this season of Advent and to go out and invite people not only to Christmas Mass, but to engage in parish life. And then we also offer other things like volunteer opportunities that are curated from our friends at Catholic Charities and much, much more. Most of these resources are available in Spanish as well on regaloperfecto.org. So the main website for Find the Perfect Gift in English is findtheperfectgift.org. The Spanish language site, which you can also link to from Find the Perfect Gift, again, is regaloperfecto.org.
Oh, thank you so much for Anthony for sharing that with us. And we have a link for the English resources available later on in the webinar. And thank you for sharing those resources that are available in Spanish language as well.
Yeah, we also, sorry, I forgot to mention, Rachel, we also provide There's other content including Sunday Gospel reflections, videos on how our different cultural, you mentioned the diversity of our Archdiocese. We also are sharing videos that how our other cultural communities across the Archdiocese are celebrating the seasons of Advent and Christmas, and a lot of social media content, as well as a Christmas Mass finder. So those people who connect to find the perfect gift can easily find a Christmas Mass near them.
Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll also make sure to share that resource for the masses and Advent services in American Sign Language, especially as people
Yep.
are visiting as well to our area from
And
the.
those are available on Find the Perfect Gift as well.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So, Anthony, I think this is an obvious question, but do you think it is important for our parishes to intentionally reach out to people who do not go to church often or only go at Christmas, and why?
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, practically speaking, Advent and Christmas, it's a time of year, it's, getting colder. And as we know, a lot of people suffer with seasonal depression, or maybe it's their first season without a loved one. And so a lot of the difficulties or loneliness or whatever that people experience are magnified. And also people are looking for a spiritual home. They have a heart for volunteerism, or they're seeing people around them celebrate religious rituals. And if they don't already have a place to celebrate, to find community, to feel a sense of belonging, and to kind of lift them out of whatever that difficulty is, whether it's connected to the holidays or not, the time of year is a really important one. So it's important that we just respond to that as Christians who are called to welcome all of God's people and to spread that gospel message to all nations. I think it's important to hear the cry of the poor in spirit as well, and to share with them the joy of the gospel that we've been given and that we celebrate during Christmas.
And I know I've been to different forums as well. When we were speaking to, again, people that live in those types of settings, like group homes, a lot of times those people are in our neighborhoods and we don't even know they're there, and they're waiting to be welcomed to a community, as you mentioned. So it's so important for us to think about those people who are lonely and seeking that connection with Christ. And there are people, again, living with disabilities that could be right in our neighborhoods, that are waiting for us to reach out to them.
Exactly.
So, what do you think parishes can do during the Advent and Christmas season to ensure everyone feels welcome and returns in the new year, right? That's sort of our goal.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to get out of our own routines of shopping and indulgence.
Mm.
It's really easy for us to get into the spirit of celebration during Advent. There's so many wonderful. I love the holiday season and all the wonderful foods and movies and songs and everything that we indulge in during that time. But sometimes we have to make sure that we're also remembering to look for those who, like you said, don't have the same sense of community, who maybe are left out of those celebrations. And it's likely that they're all around us, but we have to open our eyes and to kind of get out of our own heads and our own plans, and look for them and invite them into our celebrations. It doesn't mean that we have to be morose or sad, but it just means maybe going out of our way to invite somebody to that cookie exchange, or to the parish event, or whatever, who we see at work or in our other community celebration, and to not be afraid of someone saying no, or they're not religious or whatever it is. But even if they do, that gesture of invitation is an expression of Christ's love. And it's important to invite people, as I said, not only to Christmas Mass, but to invite them to engage in parish life. As you said, Rachel, we want people to not only come for Christmas, but to come after the new year. So we want to invite them to other parish events, smaller communities that might consist of their peers or other people like them, or with shared interests. Maybe even invite people you see and encounter to dinner, learn more about them, hear about their experience at Christmas Mass. After you invite them, say, hey, I'd love to get together with you. What did you think of the music? Was this your first time at a parish? A lot of times that healthy curiosity shows people, again, that love of Christ, and makes them feel wanted and have a sense of belonging that'll encourage them to come back and engage in the family of the Lord in our parishes.
And I recently heard a parish that sells Christmas trees, and often a lot of our parishes do that. Um, and for the first time recently, I heard a volunteer with that saying, "This is our time to evangelize to the community because more often people are just randomly coming to our church to buy a Christmas tree, and this is our
Right.
opportunity to show that welcome that you just expressed, Anthony." So sometimes it's even our other parish life events we don't even think about are opportunities to meet people um, in our community that are coming to us. And we just take that next step to say, hey, have you, our Christmas services are these times, and please come back. So again, just another way to think about reaching our community is even things like that we have every year at our parish.
Exactly. We're so blessed that we live in a country that's at least still very culturally Christian, and so we have a lot of these opportunities where people are coming to the parish to have that sense of festivity or participate in some activity that we've advertised, and it's a real opportunity to invite them into a deeper relationship with the Lord through a deeper relationship with our community and with us. And so getting out of our comfort zone to when they're coming to buy that Christmas tree or come to the dinner or whatever it is that they're excited to participate in, to get out of our comfort zone and invite them to a Christmas mass, invite them to a ministry event or a parish mission, or like I said, to maybe go for coffee and to get to know them more and invite them to be deeper part of the community.
Exactly, exactly. So we often hear these, I'm going to call them catchphrases, such as Jesus is the reason for the season or keep Christ in Christmas. But we kind of touched on this, but how can a parish with all those activities of the season help parishioners as well integrate this into their daily and family life? Because we hear those phrases very often and we see them on
Right.
different places, but what are some ways you think a parish could help parishioners and others kind of put that into their hearts as well?
Yeah, I think this is really important. When I was reflecting on this, Jesus is the reason for the season. I thought of myself, but also what was Jesus's reason for coming? I think we have to ask ourselves the question, what does it really mean to imitate Christ? He was constantly, our Lord was reaching out to others, to dine with them, to be with them in friendship. When he had dinner with sinners, he didn't condescend them, but he constantly affirmed the good in them that they were doing, their desire to be with him and honor him, and he invited them to follow him. I think the best thing that parishes can do is to help people see how the many beautiful celebrations of the season honor God. So even things that we might think are just cultural, we might shrug off and say are not as good because they're secular. They present something of the goodness of God, the love in our family gatherings and the unity that expresses, our desire and heart for volunteerism, the extra times of prayer that we make. And we can empower people to invite Jesus into every moment of their lives. So whether that's suggesting people take an extra time for grace before meals to voice their petitions and not just rush through grace for the meal, but to maybe take some time to read some scripture and go around for intentions, or to incorporate a prayer of thanksgiving after opening gifts. Or I know some people, do split their times of gifts with also, you mentioned Epiphany, which in some cultures is the time when they share gifts. And we can prepare and we can prepare our hearts too, whether in reflection, in the sacrament of confession, during Advent, which really is a time of preparation, so that on Christmas we not only celebrate Jesus, but we can celebrate the work that he's doing in our hearts to bring us into right relationship with him, to bring us into holiness and unity with our brothers and sisters. So again, I think just making those extra times of prayer for our already beautiful celebrations, inviting people into those celebrations as Jesus did, and then reflecting on our own journey of holiness throughout Advent.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, because those are very simple things we could even do now, right? As well
Exactly.
in our family life and our individual lives as well. So I mentioned earlier that people with disabilities and persons who are deaf often feel rejected by society and our own churches. We know that this happens and at times and still happens. What do you think a parish could do to welcome people living with disabilities or persons who are deaf home to the Catholic Church?
Well, a lot of the things I already mentioned, but we have to, really recognize and challenge ourselves that, a handshake, even if from the pastor on the way out of church, is not enough. We
Mm,
need to engage. We should really have enough greeters at our parish, that visitors are engaged in conversation. If someone is new, somebody in that parish lobby or gathering space recognizes that and not only says hello, goodbye, but really engages them, like I said, in conversation. We should have a healthy curiosity about people's lives, which people really appreciate. I think sometimes we're fearful because we feel like asking people questions is invasive. But I think if we take that risk of rejection, we often find that people rather feel cared for
mm,
and valued when we express that curiosity. And when they respond to those questions, we can then respond to their needs and also invite them to share their gifts with our community. Um, as opposed to just giving them what we have to offer as a parish or as a ministry, we can recognize that God is already working in everyone's lives, even someone who's only come to Mass during Christmas and Easter, that God is doing something valuable in their life and they can share it with us. Um, we should also, practically speaking, be knowledgeable about our parish community so that as we learn about people, their needs and gifts, we can connect them to ministries and friendships that would most engage them where they are on their journey. So if we know the different groups and the different leaders and people who are very involved in our parish community, and then we learn about someone's interests or background or personality, again, we can connect them with those areas of parish life, which will make them feel known and valued and give them a real sense of belonging. Um, Overall, we should really follow Jesus and seeing the best in people and being non-judgmental and listening to them as he did often in his ministry, particularly on that road to Emmaus, where he started that whole conversation listening to those disciples and walking with them in friendship. If we're seeking to welcome people home during the Advent and Christmas season, then the parish should feel like a home and the visitors should be made to feel like family.
yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think too, you mentioned about curiosity, and that's when we engage, especially with people with disabilities. We want to not hesitate to engage with them because they are waiting to be embraced by our church, just as you and I are. And when we reach out and just take that step to know them and to understand, it really can heal those hurts that have occurred in the past. And I really would emphasize today as well that our greeters and ushers, I think we're so oftentimes in the parish just more attuned to just getting the slots filled and not thinking about that ministry as one that needs formation, that would like to know what to do when a person with a wheelchair comes into the parish or a person who might need large print. So we should never forget that all of our ministries need formation and guidance. It's not just a matter of how many people can we get to fill the slots, right, Anthony? you know,
Yeah, great point.
Yes. So this tip sheet that we discussed is also available as a handout with this webinar. And I encourage our ministry volunteers and parish staff and clergy to really engage with those very valuable roles. As you mentioned, greeters and ushers are the first face typically people see when they come into the church. Um, and I've always been grateful too when they're identified very well too. So you know that they are a volunteer at the church and that also that they feel comfortable handling a lot of different situations because that's where the misunderstanding occurs because the person might not know what to do if a child with autism is suddenly um, having a challenge during mass. but they can get that formation and training to know to offer to help, like we mentioned, instead of saying your child needs to leave the liturgy. So let's not forget that all of our parish ministries, we all seek that formation as well. So now we will open it up to our questions and comments. And you will see that there's a chat box on the side of your screen. So please feel free to think about and reflect any questions or comments you might have. And as people are doing that, we will go ahead and share some resources as well on what's available in our Archdiocese of Washington community. So please, all are welcome to join an Advent Day of Reflection facilitated by the Department of Special Needs Ministries that will be held on December 7th at St. Rose of Lima Parish in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We will have 2 simultaneous sessions. One will be in American Sign Language, and the person will be reflecting with the community on the hidden treasures of the church and Christmas. But voicing will be available as well, so all can join that session. There will also be a session for older teens, those 14 and older, to adults and their caregivers with individuals that have learning differences. And we will reflect on the many faces of Mary and how Mary is present in our lives. And afterwards, we will all join with one another for a light lunch. So please join us for this Advent half day of reflection on December 7th. Also, Anthony, you mentioned earlier that sometimes the holidays can be a very challenging time for people. People can feel a loss that they've recently had, and it's kind of all comes to the front during the holidays. So in partnership with the Prince George's County and Prince George's Community Resources, all are welcome again to our Brunch Bunch, which will be Thursday, November 21st. And we will talk about some resources and ways that we can be present to people that have the holiday blues, but when the holiday blues become something deeper, and what we can do to ensure that people are feeling fully supported. So all are welcome again to the Brunch Bunch, and this Brunch Bunch session is always held at Holy Family Church in Mitchellville, Maryland. For several years, we have hosted Las Posadas for the deaf community and families supporting a loved one with developmental and intellectual disabilities from Spanish-speaking households. And as I mentioned earlier, Las Posadas is a traditional celebration originating in Mexico, recalling the journey of Mary and Joseph as they seek a place for Jesus to be born. So our Las Posadas celebration will be held on December 21st here at the Pope Francis Center, starting at 6:30. Again, all are welcome to this very joyous celebration, and there's plenty of ways that food and lots of fun. A great way to get fully into the Advent spirit, of course, is with singing and cookies. This fully inclusive event, Cookies and Carols, welcomes everyone to the parish. All community members, all neighborhood residents are all welcome for caroling and fellowship. The teen choir leads the singing, and all the entire parish is invited and beyond. And of course, there's cookies. You can't have caroling without cookies. And this will be held on December 18th from 6:30 to 8:30 at, again, St. Rose of Lima Parish. But please, I invite any parishes that would be interested in hosting an event like Cookies and Carols to please contact us, and we can give you the details. This is a very easy way to have an event, and it's a lot of fun as well, and kind of touching on what Anthony's saying, where we use these kind of traditions of our Christmas season and Advent season as ways to reach out to our broader community. So please, all are welcome to Cookies and Carols there on December 18th. Another great tradition also in our Southern Maryland parish of St. Aloysius in Leonardtown, Maryland. They will have a mass again on Saturday, December 7th at 5 p.m., where fully inclusive of persons with disabilities and really meaningfully engaged in all parts of that liturgy. And again, it's a witness to the entire parish and community on the gifts people with disabilities bring to our church. So again, that's in Southern Maryland for our parishes there near Leonardtown, Maryland. And this resource page is available as well as a handout with our webinar. We have Find a Perfect Gift. And thank you, Anthony, for reminding us to include our Spanish language resource as well. So we will update that. And also noted here are our different community resource organizations. And they have many different ways to celebrate the holidays and for fellowship. So please, depending on where you live, you can reach out to these community resources for more information. And also, we are here for you at the Department of Special Needs Ministries to make sure that you have the resources of the parish as well in order to fully welcome and include everyone. And please stay tuned for our next scheduled webinar, which will be in January 2020. And we will, again, do this as we do every year, explore the issues that are going to be relevant to families and individuals living with disabilities. And please stay tuned for the date. And we will have ways that you can advocate and ways that you can ensure that laws are being done in a just way that support families and those living with disabilities. And your voice does matter. So please stay tuned for that, and we will kind of walk through the different things that people can be aware of and advocate, because your voice does matter, as I mentioned. And when we join together, that really can help bring about change. So, Anthony, I see we don't have any questions at this time, but we again have all these resources available. Okay.
Yep, that's right. You can find our
I'm sorry, I think we do have one comment that we will be having in that January legislative webinar about how changes at the federal level will impact things at our state level. And again, so please stay tuned for that webinar. I'm sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
Yep, I was just going to say on findtheperfectgift.org, there's a tab for parish resources, which some of those will be updated in the next week or two ahead of Advent, but feel free to look at those, and you should find there my contact information, or you can reach out to the Office of Special Needs, whose information is here, obviously, if you have any other questions for me, or I can do anything to support your parish's evangelization efforts. But thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you again, Anthony, for joining us. And please let us know again if there's any parish events you would like us to share with our Archdiocese community. We are here at the Department of Special Needs Ministries to support the parish life and those living with disabilities and those who are deaf. And come, Lord Jesus, come. So thank you again, Anthony, for joining us today.
Amen. You're very welcome.
And thank you again, everyone.